Hey, what's happening, family? It's your man, Mark Black. You know what time it is. Happy Hump Day to all of you. Welcome to the midweek broadcast here. We're going to chill today. Nothing major, nothing heavy, but we're going to have a brief discussion. The topic is inspired by a conversation I had with Miss Denny today. So, instant shout out to Miss Denny, right? Family, show her some love. You see her in the chat. Before I get started, just a couple of things as usual, right? Make sure you check the description field of the video. In every one of my videos, there are links to resources, reports, you name it, right? For all sorts of different information to get up on your ADOS advocacy. Also, too, there's links there to support my work if you so choose, right? Again, I'm asking people to join my Patreon, put $5 on it, right? Also, I do have SuperChat available. One quick announcement I'd like to make. For some reason, I have not been able to get the call-in piece working properly, right? And I told you all that I'm looking to set up something different anyway, right? So for now, for the next few broadcasts or what have you, until I can get that piece squared away, we're gonna refrain from the calls, right? If you have something you absolutely want me to address, of course, there's the super chat, as little as $1, and I'll read your question and answer it or whatever. Because when the chat gets to flowing hot and heavy, I can't pay attention to every single comment. All right. So as per usual, let me shout out everybody. Of course, I already gave Miss Denny a shout out. I see Black Man in the house, fam. I see you, oh boy Peach, Carmen. We definitely gonna talk about it today, fam. The rule is that if you in my house, knock on the door, let me know you here. You can lurk. It's all right. You ain't got to participate in chat. But I want to shout you out and show you some love for your support. So make sure you pop in the chat and let us know you're here. The topic for today's broadcast, fam, is the wake-up call. Right? Now, this is something that most of us, Darker Visions, fam, happy hump day to you and welcome to the broadcast. This is something that most of us are pretty familiar with in a real limited sense, right? Because the idea behind a wake-up call is that a person experiences something or a circumstance that after they experience that circumstance, they see things differently than how they saw them previous to that circumstance occurring, right? LaShawn, I see you, fam. Happy hump day and welcome to the broadcast. I have found in my life, fam, that more often than not, wake-up calls are more limited in nature than we like to believe they are. Let me explain a little something to you, right? We're going to talk about some basic psychology. Shabazz, I see you, fam. Happy hump day and welcome to the broadcast. The basic tenet in psychology, fam, is that we human beings, like all other life forms on this planet, are wired with an essential binary. Binary just means two things, right? Usually two things in opposition. Think of on and off, right? Light, dark, right? A binary. This essential mental binary is that we run toward things that are pleasurable and we run away from things that are painful, right? For example, the fight or flight that people talk about, like when you get into a circumstance, some people put up their dukes, other people beat feet, right? That's a part of the essential mental and biological binary that drives us. We run toward things that are pleasurable, enjoyable, tasty, smell good, look good, and run away from things that are stinky, ugly, scary, painful, and so on and so forth. Now, in order for this process, though, to take place, we need feedback from outside ourselves, right? In other words, situations, the environment, circumstances need to operate in a way that is not normative for us, right? And so when the circumstances change, don't worry about it, Michael. You right on time, fam. Happy Hump Day and welcome to the broadcast. When circumstances change, those change moments, those moments in time are opportunities to wake up, right? To do things differently. I want to introduce you to a specific term, right? Because the word that I'm going to say is not unfamiliar, but the methodology behind my usage of the word is unfamiliar. That word is crisis. C-R-I-S-I-S. Crisis. Comes from the Latin crucis, which derives from the Latin crux, which means a cross. Right? A cross or a crisis, a crucis in Latin describes a crossroads, a joining of two roads. Now, why is this imagery important? Because when you meet at the junction of two paths, it is likely that there is an opportunity there to change direction. But you have to have the impetus. In other words, that change in direction has to be driven by information that shows that the change in direction is going to get you, or is more likely to get you where you're trying to go than to continue on the way that you've been moving. Those moments in time, those crisis points, are opportunities for us to change the way we're going, right? In our own personal lives, fam, we see opportunities all the time, these instances, these circumstances that occur, some of which we initiated, some of which we are just simply, for lack of a better way to describe it, victims of circumstance of. But at any point, at any rate, we are brought to, if you will, a point of a choice, right? A crossroads at which we can take a different path. The problem that I have seen with the idea, fam, of the wake-up call is that many of us don't understand, or at least we don't appear to understand, that there has to be a change external to us that necessitates or motivates a change internally within us. Right? Let me make it make sense, fam. I'm going to talk black to you for a minute. All right? Let's say that you married, you have a spouse, right? You in love, been married for 4 years, 5 years, and everything is good. There comes a point in that relationship when everything is just normative, right? When your daily circumstances just operate in the same way. So now, in that relationship, there's not likely to be much change. But because of the lack of change, there usually ends up being a lack of growth as well. Right? There's an old saying, fam. Familiarity breeds contempt. When you think that you know something, you know how a thing is going to be, right? Like you know that this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and they're going to respond like this, and they're going to say that, and you're going to feel like this, and you're going to feel like that. Those situations that arise don't give you the same charge, right? They don't provide the same impetus to do anything other than what you would normally do. And thus, even though these moments are opportunities for change, you don't take them. They're not the wake-up calls. And it doesn't matter, fam, that standing on the outside looking in, that we see, wait a minute, this is an opportunity for them to wake the fuck up, right? It doesn't matter. The external drive, the external impetus for the wake-up call is necessary for the internal perception of a wake-up call. You get a divorce, right? Your spouse comes to you after 4 or 5 years of what you thought was a happy relationship, and they talking about they want out. Now you have impetus. Now you have motivation. Peace to you, Onyx B1 to you. Happy Hump Day and welcome to the broadcast. Now, all of a sudden, you have the drive needed to look at how your circumstances are and what may need to change, what may need to alter, I should say, right? But you only have that motivation because you were acted upon by an outside impetus, by an outside motivation. This conversation that we have today is appropriate for me because, as you all know, I'm going to be moving this Saturday, right? Moving into a new place. Fam, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I fucking hate moving. I hate packing. I hate labeling. I hate stacking boxes. I've been trying to put off as much of this shit as I can, as often as I can. I hate moving. It's one of the biggest changes that anybody could ever do. Even though I'm only moving around the corner from where I currently live now. Same apartment complex and everything, just a different apartment. It's still traumatic. I've had to go through and get rid of years of shit that I let stack up here in the house. I found utensils I didn't even know I had. Right? I found tools that I've been looking for years. Moving sucks because nobody likes change. If we could, we would lock our lives down so that every day would be predictable. But I argue today with you, fam, that is the greatest injustice that you can do to yourself, to your family, and to your people. I argue today, fam, that the change is where living occurs. Think about this. We're talking about it right now on a personal level, right? We're talking about like my move. And Onyx is right. Moving is tiresome as fuck. Right? But now, like always, let's take this understanding and expand it out to the level of our tribe. For decades here in America, we have worked hard to teach America how we want to be treated. And many of us have gotten comfortable, apathetic. When you talk to us about politics, they don't want to hear you. When you talk to them about our economic situation, they bring it right back to them. Well, hey, I'm doing all right. You know, I'm making money. I'm out here getting the bag. So what is you talking about? You mentioned to, right? I hear you, black man. Have a garage sale. You feel me? I should have done that. You out here trying to convince people of the need to align themselves with their fellow tribes people and honor and uphold our unique lineage and heritage. And people look at you like you're stupid. Even really close family members of yours got nothing but pushback. And if you were so inclined, beloved, you could take that personally. I know that many of us do. Many of us say, damn, this ADOS advocacy is hard as hell. Like, I talk to my family and I bring them the information and they just not trying to hear it. What the hell is wrong with them? I'm going to tell you what's wrong with them, fam. What's wrong with them is the same thing that's wrong with everybody in America. The problem is that they don't have the motivation to change. You see, if I put my boot on your neck, that's painful as fuck. You're going to squirm and wiggle around underneath my boot until such time as you're able to get it off of you. But now, if I step in the middle of your back, or I let you get up on your knees, but I put my foot on your leg, right? That's still uncomfortable. It's not quite where you want to be. But it's a hell of a lot better than it was when I had my boot on your neck. And so, if I don't provide you with any additional motivation to struggle against me, you'll become comfortable with my boot on your leg. Right? With me stepping on your foot. You're still in the same position. You're still under my power, under my control, doing what I want you to do when I want you to do it. Nothing essentially about the situation has changed. The only thing that has changed is your perception. I need you to understand that, ADOS family. There is nothing that has changed essentially about our position in America the last 400 years. The only thing that has changed is our perception of our situation. Dr. Leslie Branch wrote a book that I've been reading where she talks about what she calls the paradoxical ebullience of black people, of ADOS people in America. Now, what does she mean by paradoxical ebullience? Let's break that down. Two big ass $20 words. Paradoxical means contradictory, like jumbo shrimp or cold heat, right? Two things that no matter how you try to put the concepts together, they don't fit. There's a paradox, right? Like if you were to go in the past and kill your grandfather before you were born, well, that would create a paradox. Because if you kill your grandfather before you were born, how were you able to go back into the past to kill your grandfather before you were born? Because you were never born, right? Paradoxical. Shit that's nonsensical. It don't make sense, right? Now, what is ebullience? Ebullience is a big ass word that just means optimism, joy, effervescence, positive outlook. Peace, Omega and Double C. I see you, fam. Happy Hump Day. Shout out to you as well, son dog. Ebullience means to be optimistic, to be bright siding, silver clouding. You know what I'm saying? That things are good. So Dr. Branch describes ADOS people as the bearers of a paradoxical ebullience. a nonsensical sense of optimism. And the reason why it is paradoxical is because we are optimistic in spite of the information that suggests that we should be, if not just realistic, pessimistic even about our actual prospects, circumstances, positions, and so on and so forth. Excuse me, fam. It's almost as if ADOS people believe that the boot is on our leg when it's actually still on our necks. Right? We're thinking that our circumstances are better than what they are. So we not only lack the impetus to change, right? So in other words, we don't have enough motivation coming from externally, right? We're not seeing our actual reality, our actual circumstances clearly enough to drive us to a crisis point, right? A point of change. But the information we do see, we misinterpret it as doing better than what we actually are. It's a double whammy, fam, that only the strongest of wake-up calls will wake you up to. It is a sad commentary on the reality of many of us who are the American descendants of slavery. I'm a big fan of science, fam. You probably guessed that because you know your man's a nerd, right? Shout out to all my nerds who are members of the Angry Black Sheep. So, as a science nut, I'm real into stuff like astronomy, cosmology, physics, shit like that. Now, one of the first things I learned about science was Newton's laws of motion, right? Now, the first of Newton's laws is that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, right? And an object at rest tends to stay at rest unless acted upon by an outside force, the law of inertia, right? In other words, if this sits here, unless something comes along that applies force to it, it is likely to continue to sit there. Now, if I were to take it and throw it, if there were no other forces other than my arm throwing this container, it would continue in the direction in which I released it forever. Now, of course, in the real world, there are other forces that act upon this thing, such as gravity, such as electromagnetism, and so on and so forth, right? But the law of inertia says that any physical object continues to move in the direction that it's moving unless something else acts upon it to change its direction. We call that momentum, right? You can have momentum and velocity in a given direction. A force is applied to that object which changes its momentum, and it also changes its direction in space and time. I would argue that too many of us have been born, acculturated, live, and die following the same trajectory, the same momentum that we were given by our parents, who was given to them by their parents and by their parents, all the way back to the plantations. Very few of us ever truly question what it is that our lives entail. What is the actual reality of our existence here within the confines of the United States of America? right? With not necessarily, fam, with the intention on feeling some sort of way about it, right? But just knowing about it. Shout out to Mr. Spacely, by the way. Happy Hump Day and welcome to the broadcast. We know that we do not like change. We don't like for shit to be upset. But change is the only constant in the entire universe. As long as we have 3 spatial dimensions and 1 temporal one, the arrow of time that moves forward, change is everywhere, constantly. There's always something different per unit time. It is the underlying fundamental reality of our universe. Thank you, Slip Stitch, man. I appreciate the love and support. I really do. Frida Green, what's happening, fam? I see you. Happy Hump Day and welcome to the broadcast. Change is reality. It is reality. I need you to understand that. Everything around you, ADOS family, has changed. And those changes have brought us to a point of crisis, individually, in our families, in our communities, as well as a tribe. We today have an opportunity to alter our path, to allow the forces that are bombarding us to guide our decisions and to take a different trajectory, to change literally the history of our people here in the United States of America. So, what will it take, fam? What will it take in order to embrace the truth of this matter, right? You're not late, Agent Smith. You right on time, fam. Happy Hump Day to you and welcome to the broadcast. Before we answer that question, there's a question that comes before this. What is the purpose of a wake-up call? Right? What is a wake-up call supposed to do for you? Last time I checked, a wake-up call is supposed to get your attention, your full attention, right? When you're sleeping, you're in dreamland. You know, it could be unicorns one night and vampires the next. You feel me? It could be on the plains, the grassy plains one night, and on the mountaintops the next. Or under the sea one night and in space the next. But the one thing that is universal about being sleeping, being in the dreamland, is that you can't trust any of it. None of it is solid. It's all ethereal. And it's all happening in your head. You can choose to give it meaning. You can choose to ignore it. Doesn't mean shit. But when that alarm goes off, or when the phone rings when you at the hotel and the desk person is saying, "Good morning, Mr. Black. Here's your wake-up call." That means that it's time for you to get on the ball, right? It means that you're now switching from the whole dream state, the whole lackadaisical, the whole apathetic, to getting your work face on, to putting your war face on, to getting your armor on and getting ready to go out there and do the needful. A wake-up call is a courtesy that is given to you to allow you to ensure that you give proper weight and importance to important events and circumstances and situations. Notice what I said, fam. It's a courtesy. Our lives, fam, are filled with such grace, such courtesy. Because as ADOS, as ADOS people, we are consistently given opportunities to wake the fuck up. To have our wake-up call. To go, wait, pause. I gotta pay attention. How I was yesterday, 2 minutes ago, can't no longer obtain beyond this point. What are some of the ways life gives us wake-up calls? Well, some of us have troubled relationships with our families, right? Some of us came up through abusive situations, or we married a spouse that is not really hitting on shit, or we got ungrateful ass kids who work to sabotage every effort that we try to do for them, and so on and so forth, right? So some of us got traumatic, turbulent, troubled relationships. For many of us, finances are a wake-up call. You don't really understand. Many of us don't really understand this whole ADOS thing until somebody starts presenting the economic arguments for the remediation, the restoration, and the repair of our people. When we start talking about how it's slated that by 2053, even if there's no additional change in our circumstances, that our people will have a zero net wealth. Right? When you start talking about how our unemployment numbers are consistently double that of our white counterparts, our white fellow citizens. Many of us, we talk about lineage and heritage. That shit sound nice. Personally, it's one of the greatest things that drive me in this advocacy. But most of us wasn't grabbed until somebody just started discussing the bag. Until somebody started talking about how even a felony convicted high school dropout white man can do better in the workplace, can have more wealth than you with your education, with your putting the nose to the grindstone. When we start discussing the billions and billions and billions of dollars in wealth that our ancestors built from 1619 to 1865. Enough wealth to build one of the most powerful nations on the planet. Then you start to get somebody's attention. When you talk about the billions upon untold billions of dollars in wealth that we were denied through redlining, through lack of access to the Homestead Act and free land and free resources and free education. That constitutes a wake-up call for many of us who are involved in this advocacy. When you start to examine the reality of your existence here, the reality of your existence, I'm not talking about just wealth. I was just in gorgeous, but I'm talking about everything. When you start as ADOS looking at the reality of what you are meant to be here in America, when you finally wake up to the reality of what that is, that's a hell of a wake-up call. When you understand that of all the groups of people here within the confines of the United States of America, you're the one that's supposed to be on the bottom. No matter how bad everybody else is doing, you're the one who's supposed to do the worst. You are supposed to have the least of everything. The least access to actual real wealth, the least access to protection, to security. No matter who else comes here, no matter where else they come from, no matter what their circumstances are, all of them come here with the reasonable expectation that they are going to have some place that isn't the bottom. Because in the United States of America, there's only one group that belongs on the bottom. The bottom caste. The ones that eat the failure, as our sister Yvette says. And that's us. Our upset and outrage at the antics of black celebrity is directly proportional to the amount of aspiration we once held to become them. Yeah, I said it. For many of you, you're upset at Jay-Z's buck dancing for the NFL and so on and so forth, for the Popeyes chicken thing and all these other things that we get pissed off about. Shalom, by the way, Sister August. Happy Hump Day to you and welcome to the broadcast. Our outrage and upset is directly proportional to the amount of aspiration we once held to become that. You don't believe me? Who hates you more, fam, than someone who once loved you? I talk to adults on this broadcast. Many of you have been through relationships that have failed. Some of which, those people, when they walk away from you, they hate your fucking guts. How many of you have been in relationships where there was so much love, but when they ended, the hatred, the rancor was just so damn strong? How is it that it never crossed your mind that the amount of rancor, the amount of upset and hatred that y'all now have for each other is directly correlated to the amount of love you once had for each other? When you experience this ADOS wake-up call, fam, the amount of advocacy that you engage in is directly proportional to your participation in your own willful ignorance prior to your advocacy. Don't believe me? I'm living proof. I'm living proof. I was once a brother who craved the acceptance of white folks. I wasn't happy unless the white people around me were happy. That didn't mean I hate my people. I love black people. I always loved my black folk. But I was always told that I was supposed to love them too. That if we could just find a way to get along, that all of the ills that I saw happening to me and my people would just go away. They would just disappear, vaporize, like dew on the leaves, on the grass. And so I spent a lot of time, fam, a lot of time being that dude who showed all 32 of my teeth to every white person I came across. That big gaping smile. I was never threatening to them. Always agreeable. Always down for whatever. But then I started to wake up. I started to have these wake-up calls. One after another one, after another one. And all of those wake-up calls kept driving me to the same place. Your people first. Trayvon gets killed, and all those white folks at my job and on my Facebook page and this, that, and the third got the chance to hear me pour out my pain at the death of our little brother. My shock at the horror of his execution. And I got to watch as each one of those motherfuckers sat there and justified the killing of this 17-year-old boy. Damn what I was feeling. Damn what his family went through. Ask me how many of those white folks are my friends today. Ask me how keen I am on being accepted by them today. I don't hate white folks. Not at all. What I have found is the reality of our circumstances is that we don't need them. See, fam, we've been sold a bill of goods, as our sister August said. We've been fed nothing but lies. We've been told that we don't have no portion here in America. That our only hope of finding real culture, real spirituality, real love, real joy is in connecting with a continent we ain't been a part of for 400 years. Many of us bought into that. Look, I'm an Xer, and if you wasn't rocking an African pendant, in the 90s, something was fucking wrong with you. If you wasn't rocking some cross colors gear with the RBG, something was wrong with you, right? We look to Africa, to the east, blackwards. Lies. As if we didn't have 300 plus years of history right here in the confines, the only place that many of us, that generations of us has ever known of as home. We've been sold a bill of goods. We've been told that without white acceptance, we don't have a shot in hell of success anywhere in America. We have been sold that line so much that part of the reason why we don't have more of us advocating for our heritage and our lineage is because they truly and honestly believe that we can't defeat America. That we can't win. Let's keep it a full fucking buck, family. Let's keep it all the way funky. The major reason why we don't have millions of ADOS descended people out here pushing and fighting for this justice claim is because the vast majority of them don't believe we can do it. Oh man, them white folks ain't gonna do right by us. They ain't gonna give us what they owe us. Y'all look crazy fighting for reparations. Tell me y'all ain't heard that. Tell me y'all ain't heard that. That unless America as a whole, to a man, to a woman, to a child, gets behind our justice claim, we ain't got a hope in hell of getting it. But again, family, it's a bill of goods. It's lies. Paula, it's not even defeatist. It's just patently false. Do you know, do any of you, here's a homework assignment, right? That you can do instead of, be mad at your man for not doing Sucker Free Saturday this coming Saturday when I move, right? Here's your weekend homework assignment. Try to see if you can find any data, because it's out there. Try to see if you can find any data about the percentage of Americans that supported the abolition of slavery in the 1800s. I'll give you a hint. If you find any number that says over 30%, it's bullshit. Christopher, happy Hump Day. Welcome to the broadcast. The overwhelming majority of Americans didn't give a fuck about slavery. And I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you, fam. I wish I was. The overwhelming majority of Americans at the end of slavery, when the emancipation of the slaves occurred and the abolition of slavery occurred, the vast majority of Americans, white Americans, did not give a damn about slavery. They weren't for fighting against it. They weren't trying to see it end. They did not care. Family, you don't believe me? In 1863, in New York, what has come to be known as the New York Draft Riots. Part of what drove the riots was the idea that white citizens were having to go fight other white citizens to defend or protect or uplift niggers. 70 to 100 black folk were lynched in New York during the New York Draft Riots. An orphanage, a black orphanage that held 200 black children in it, was burnt to the ground. And the only reason why those children didn't die is because one of their caretakers got word that the mob was coming and was able to get the children out. America didn't give a fuck about slavery. Pat hit it right on the barrelhead. Because those same European fuckers, the Irish, the Poles, the Germans, who were serfs, peons, tied to the motherfucking soil under feudal lords in Europe, got to come up to America in the places like the 5 Points and the different boroughs in New York, and essentially, as broke as they was, become their own goddamn masters over here in America, because there was only one group of people that was ever going to stay permanently on the bottom here, and they knew it wasn't them. They'd have to go through their ritual hazing, right? You know, they have to get jumped into the clique. But they knew they was going to get put on. So they didn't give a fuck about ending slavery, but yet slavery came to an end, didn't it? If you were to go and look at polls done in the 1960s that asked the question about civil rights and voting rights for African Americans, or for Negroes they called us at that time, right? If you were to look at the polls across America, again, you'd see about 25% of Americans supported civil rights and voting rights for black Americans, for the foundational black Americans, the American descendants of slavery. Even though the 13th and the 14th and the 15th Amendments to the Constitution had been passed in the 1800s, we were still having this conversation today in the 1960s. And yet that legislation got passed, didn't it? Lyndon Baines Johnson signed off. It got passed. You could argue its efficacy. You could argue whether or not it had teeth or it was toothless or whatever. Fine. I love historical debates. But you can't argue that the legislation was passed. So tell me again, how many Americans we got to have on the train with us before we are justified in pushing for our justice claim? Tell me, what's the number that's supposed to be convincing enough to finally convince you to be your ADOS wake-up call to fight for our justice claim? What's the number? Because if you look at history, there's never been a point where more than maybe 20 to 25% of Americans ever gave a damn about anything that benefited us anyway. Yet shit still gets done. And you know who does it? You. As always, you. Your ancestors saw the Union Army approaching and ran off those plantations and helped build battlements and bulwarks that helped run food to soldiers. And when they had a chance, they picked up the gun and they joined the military and went after their former masters. In the 1960s, we boycotted everywhere. We marched everywhere. We sat in everywhere, died in everywhere. And no matter how many dogs they sicked on us, and no matter how many water hoses they sprayed us down with, no matter how many beatings we took, we showed them we will not be moved. And from 1965 forward, we even showed them that we were willing to use force if we had to. Remember Watts 1965? Remember the riots in 68 when our brother Martin Luther King was assassinated? Remember LA 92? When we come together, fam, as a tribe, as the family we are, this country cannot help but to address what the fuck we talking about. Their greatest fear is that we will cleave together in a way that can never be broken. Which is why those of you who are ADOS advocates and proponents get so much shade, so much bullshit, so much smoke. Because they know that you are the holders of the keys that unlocks the golden door for your tribe. This country has consistently worked overtime to keep us separate, to keep us broken apart by lines of political ideology and class, by sexuality, by all sorts of shit. No matter what, America's job number one is to keep ADOS from being ADOS, from recognizing our own unique heritage and lineage and honoring it and honoring the bearers of it, no matter where they are, no matter who they are, no matter how old they are, or how rich they are, how poor they are, how religious they are, how religious they aren't. America's greatest fucking fear, because that's the only thing that's ever changed shit for us here, is when we all come together and we do it. It don't need to be all of us, but the more of us there is, the more likely a change is going to be. America cannot ignore us in numbers. It never could, and it never will be able to. I see you, Chad. Welcome to the broadcast. Before I wrap this up, fam, because again, I'm not taking calls, and I apologize for that. I'm going to be working to get a new call system set up that's much more functional. But before I wrap this up, I just want to say that the most important thing to understand about our conversation today is that these crisis moments, these wake-up calls, start and end with you. We can spend all the time we want pointing at the historical injustices that our people have faced, and it's all true. In your life, there's been people that done shit to you, fucked you over, stole your bread, betrayed you, lied on you, cheated on you, smacked you up, raped you, whatever. You feel me? But I need you to understand that you still exist within the essential binary of all human beings. And that is, you always retain the right to run toward that which brings you pleasure, goodness, happiness, joy, safety, sanctity, peace, and to run away from everything that creates those opposites. No matter what has happened to you individually in your life, or within the confines of your family, or what has happened to your community in cities like Flint, cities like St. Petersburg, and so on and so forth. No matter what's happened to us as a tribe, we still have the right to make that choice. America has never been able to take away our agency in that matter. Our justice claim will bring us peace. We have every right to run toward that. Run kicking and screaming, knocking and dragging, shouting to the top of our lungs for justice. We have every right to it. And so we should. And we have every right to run away from the status quo, from the bullshit that has kept us from real peace, real justice, real righteousness in our lives. This crossroads, this crisis point starts and ends with you. Pick a route. Pick a path in this moment of crisis and go a different direction. Thank you, fam, for listening to your man today. I will not again be broadcasting this Saturday due to the fact that that is the day of the move. Ooh, I hate fucking moving. So I love you all. I hope you all have a great weekend. Again, check out the links in the description box, links to books, links to reports. If you have not done so and you've been considering it, today's a good day to become a patron of mine via Patreon. Click the link and put $5 on it. But whatever you're able to put on it, I appreciate it. It's definitely needed and it's welcome. And as always, fam, Chad, by the way, good luck to you, fam, on your flight. Have a safe one. All of you be safe out there. I want to make sure, yes, Christopher, I'm moving to something better, something bigger and better. Not just for me, but for my family. And that's always a bonus. So until the next time I see you, fam, as always, I want to wish you all love, peace, prosperity, and power, real power to our people.